Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Passion Paradox podcast. I am your host, Ryan Go, and today's episode is all about authorship. Here with me today, I have a writer from the state of New Jersey who published her very first book at the age of 16. She also did this while being a full-time student at the Rowan Honors College here in Glassboro, New Jersey. Let's give her a warm welcome to the show, Miss Sonoma Attalienti. Sonoma, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thank you for having me today, and I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm super stoked to have you on here because I remember like the very first time we actually first interacted. I don't know if you remember, but it was on ZMe because we were looking at, different colleges to look at. And I came
Yeah.
across your profile and, you didn't start writing yet, did you? When we first met on ZMe.
I had, but at the time, I wasn't as deep into renewal to the point that I was comfortable enough to share with the whole world that I was writing a book. It definitely wasn't something that was as pressing on my mind as college applications, because at the time I think it was only September, October. So, the thoughts of college applications and starting college next year were weighing a lot more heavily on my mind. But then once college application season was over and I knew where I was going, and, things were basically more or less set up for me to go to college, that's when I really got invested in writing renewal again. And maybe within like a 3-4 month period, sometime after college application season, I had published it. And it was definitely something that I did actually wanted to wait until I had published it to really share with everyone, hey, I published a book and I wrote one, because then it felt like more appropriate to do so. Because I feel like, when you first start writing a book, you should definitely kind of lay low on it, because you never know what can happen with the production of it, especially very early on.
I see. Okay. Awesome, awesome intro. So, the first question that I wanted to ask you, right, to just set the stage and really dial it back as to, just to let the audience know who you are, right? Who are we talking to today? Tell us, tell the audience who you are, what you do, and why you do it in the first place.
Well, hello everyone. Ryan kind of already gave everyone a bit of a spiel, but I'll do my own personal one. Hi everyone, I'm Sonoma, more formally Sonoma and Attalienti. I just turned 17 years old last month. I'm currently a student at Rowan University in their Martisan Honors Program, which meant I was in the top 10% of matriculating first year students. So that meant, I think at the time, there are 3,100 students here at Rowan. So that 31 first year students at Rowan. So I was in about the top 250 to about 320 students that came in this year, which is crazy to think that I actually accomplished that being so young, starting college. Um, I'm from Freehold, New Jersey, and this past year I graduated from Jackson Liberty High School. Some of my favorite things are Disney. I love Disney more than anything in the world. I exercise very regularly because exercise is important. I'm actually on the swim team here at Rowan as well. I love to travel. I love theater, and that really sums up who I am as a person. Those are some of my favorite things. Those are some of my favorite things to do.
Awesome, awesome intro. So, the first, not first, we just went over the first, but the next thing that I wanted to talk about, right, was before renewal, right? What, I guess, introduced you to the field and industry of creative writing itself?
Ryan, that's actually a very good question, and definitely a good intro question, because I think my story of how I started writing is very unique and is one a lot of people wouldn't expect. A lot of people don't follow me on TikTok. I did sort of make a TikTok video about this. I was actually very young when I started to love creative writing. It was actually my mother. She probably doesn't even remember this. I remember when I was younger, I used to love to make up stories, and I used to love to, even sometimes like make like little like picture books in elementary school. And I think that's actually kind of like what got me into it. But surprisingly, I was not a very good writer when I was younger. And that is something that I do remember being told a lot when I was younger. I remember, I didn't write a lot of essays in school until I was about in sixth, seventh, eighth grade. So not until middle school did I really start to write a lot. Um, but I would definitely say that what got me into writing was just I loved to express my creativity, and I always just loved to come up with stories, and I always kind of feel like that, there is really no limit to what you can come up with in your head. And I always found writing to be one of like the highest forms of art that there is, even when I was younger. So I guess always, exercising that creativity through, like I said, like writing stories, coming up with stories and telling my parents about them was kind of like what got me into writing. And, I would say an interesting story that definitely comes to mind when I think about my writing career is I remember when I was in fifth grade, I remember writing a really long paper. It was at the beginning of fifth grade, so I was like 9 or 10. I remember I had written something and I really didn't do that well writing it. Um, there were just a lot of grammatical errors, and I remember that my mother actually found the paper, and I remember that she told me that my writing wasn't where it needed to be. And then I just remember when she told me that, like, I didn't really take it to heart. I kind of actually, if anything, like was like, what can I do to make this better? And then I just remember that whole year I worked really hard on becoming a better writer. And whenever I had to like do writing assignments in school, I always like worked really hard on them. And then I think by the very next year, I had written a paper at the beginning of sixth grade, and I remember reading it to my dad, and my dad was like, "This is amazing." And like that's like when I realized, okay, I do have a talent at this. So I wouldn't really say there was like a specific place that like my writing began. I would really just say, if I had to say like where it began, was where just like coming up with like creative stories. But I would say it truly started as like a talent when I was about 11. I'm sorry if that was like a really long answer, but that was something that I really didn't want to talk about.
I see. And please don't apologize. We love the detailed explanations as to, what inspired you to start pursuing your passion. In your case, it's writing, right? Now, I want to go back to something that you said earlier. I've written it down here. You stated that writing and creative writing in general is what you consider to be one of the highest forms of art, right? The very first episode that, we ever filmed on the Passion Paradox featured a rapper slash producer, and he argued that music is the highest form of art, right? So I want to kind of put you on the spot here, right? What makes creative writing, and I guess literature in general, what makes it a higher form than art than other mediums of art such as drawing, music, and other things like that?
Well, William Shakespeare once said that when words fail, music speaks. So I think that music is in its own sense a form of writing, because when you think about it, like when you write out a song, it's not like, the same type of language that you would use in like an essay or in like a book. It's more of like a form of language that you use to portray like very strong feelings of like emotion or like a theme. So I think, to answer your question, I think that music in of itself is a form of writing, just a more eccentric form of writing. And I think that when like normal, like I'm saying this, like if you write a sentence and it's like, you know, we went somewhere, a form of music can like maybe emphasize on that, like maybe add more feeling to that. And I think, to answer your question further, like when you have a song, it's more of like you are portraying feelings and emotions through words and through like instruments, but the instruments help amplify the meaning of those words, because the words that you use in a song are a lot different than what you would use in like a written work. And like think of it this way, when you are writing, you're taking, for me at least, like when I write, I take the visual that I have in my head and I put it all out on paper. And think of it this way, like when you look at a painting, you can't really, you don't, like, you can always kind of maybe guess and feel what the painting means, but you can never know for sure. When you read something that someone wrote, you can always, because you can always grasp like as accurately what the writing work means as closely as you can, if that makes sense. I definitely think that writing is something that can be understood and can be learned by so many people. And not even just that, like writing is very universal. It's something that like everyone can understand because it can always be tried. The music is something can is different in every culture, rather writing is not. And I do think that in that regard, I think writing is a higher form of art because you're taking something that you feel and you see in your head and then putting it out on paper into a depiction that everyone can understand. Rather, music is something that may not always be understood by someone, but writing, I feel like in a way, depending on how well it's portrayed, can always, like, I mean, some of the best writing works can probably be understood by just about everyone globally, but the best music may not, is my answer to that.
I love your stance on this because it's an interesting take that I've never heard before. Because personally, I always thought that music and writing were on two separate universes and didn't really coincide. But by your response, I'm seeing that, and it's starting to click in my head that writing in and of itself, plus the additions of music, they really go hand in hand and combine with one another. So I just wanted to ask you, right? Because based on your response, do you think that music and writing are somewhat synonymous because like you said, music just adds another layer of emotion and depiction of feeling to the base writing that it was inspired by.
I definitely think in some ways they are synonymous just because like you both, that's like in both of them, you are like, physically writing something for someone to maybe understand and like internalize. I mean, with music, it's more so meant to like be a form of entertainment. I really do think that they're honestly almost the same because like with music, you're listening to something, or maybe you are physically reading it to maybe get the feelings of the artist. Rather, when you read something or when you write something, you're trying to feel the feelings of the author who wrote it. So I definitely think that honestly they are synonymous. When you do think about it, both of them are forms of entertainment. They both can portray emotion. I think the only difference is like with a song, you have the instrumental part in like in the background, like I said, to kind of like amplify it, to like make it have more of a rhythm and to like portray more feelings that you can hear that you can then feel in your heart.
I love that response. Now, to really reel it back in, instead of, just talking about music and writing as a whole, to draw it back into, me and you, right? I want to discuss about any previous projects you had before your first published book renewal. So if you could just take us, the audience, and me through that, what was the process like?
Well, I did think about writing a book when I was about 10, but I never really I was serious about it. I just kind of maybe thought about doing it, and I had like maybe written like a really rough draft of it. It wasn't like even like a long book. I never followed through with it. I didn't even know like where to begin to start on writing it or getting it published. I remember whenever I had to do like, essays and I had to write short stories when I was younger, I always took them very seriously and I always took them in a folder. And I thought, maybe if I ever like wrote enough short stories, maybe I would like publish a book about like maybe like I had the name of like, Attalienti's 100 short stories at one point. And I thought maybe if I had written that many short stories by like a certain point, maybe I would publish a book on it. But of course, that never happened. Um, and another thing was like I feel like, I never really had a unique story to tell until I was in sixth grade. So I feel like that by living and experiencing life too, I feel like that was almost a gateway for me to like to start my first ever project. But to answer your question, no, I was never really like dead set on any other projects until renewal. And renewal took me a few years to write. I'm working on another project right now that might be interesting to talk about later. But no, I wasn't really ever like dead set on like anything before renewal. It wasn't until renewal that I was like, okay, I should definitely write about this and publish this because I have an amazing story to tell and I have a great message to share.
I see. So instead of having multiple projects before renewal, I guess it was just a culmination of different ideas that were all set and put into renewal as it's first published, right?
Yes.
I see.
That's
Awesome.
right.
So to fast forward, right, because we just discussed your time when brainstorming the ideas and really coming up with the manuscript for renewal, you said something earlier during the beginning of the interview about how you essentially marketed your story, right? And you said that you preferred to lay low instead of really putting yourself out there in terms of renewal and its publication. What made you choose to lay low and really keep it all under the radar instead of being, I mean, instead of having it as the first thing that you tell people in terms of what you're working on now?
Well, I would definitely just say my reasoning for like laying low about the project for as long as I did. I don't think I really began to tell people until it was just about finished and like I had a whole plan for it because like I didn't want people to like constantly be like, when's it gonna be published? When's it gonna be published? I kind of just looked at it as like, think of it this way, when you are maybe dating someone, you may not really tell people right away that you're dating them, maybe not until like you get engaged and then you get married. And then like when you get engaged, you'll tell people like that, that you're engaged and that you're getting married. I looked at it like kind of like that. Like it's not 100% certain that this is gonna happen. Like I want it to happen, but it's because I want something, doesn't mean it's gonna happen. I just looked at it as more so like, you know, if it really is meant to be and if it happens then I can tell everyone in my life about it because and it was also that like I didn't like want to tell people and then like maybe they would like trash on the idea or I was just anxious about it. And honestly, as much as I did want renewal to get published, there were a lot of occasions where I did doubt that it would. Even like when like the book was finished, I still had only told like my close circle of friends about it because like I had no clue how to even begin getting it published. I think once I found a publisher, then that's when I started typing. Because at that point, I was like, okay, now I know it's gonna get published. I know what's gonna happen. I just didn't like want to tell people and then like something happened and then like I had to tell them, okay, now it's not gonna happen. I just always had like the fear in like the back of my mind, like I don't want to put this all out there than to just put it all out there later. Like I kind of felt like if I told people, okay, I'm writing a book and then like it didn't end up happening, then it would be like the universe's way like spitting back out to me, this was not meant to be. And then everyone was like gonna do that, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it actually does help me with my understanding as to why you chose that route in the first place. So thank you for, really explaining it to us in a very detailed manner. Now, the next thing, fast forwarding just a little bit into time, renewal is published, right? To the audience who hasn't heard of it before, why don't you give us a synopsis as to what it's about?
I was waiting for you to ask that, and thank you so much for handing that microphone over for me to talk about that. So, just for a little bit of a backstory before I really talk about what renewal was about, um, most people know this about me. Some people sort of do. Some people maybe haven't like that in the back of their mind about me. But I did attend a Catholic school for 8 years, from when I was in pre-K to when I was in sixth grade. So for 8 school years, I did attend a Catholic school. And let me just say, it was one of the worst experiences that I ever had. I still think about some of the experiences that I had there every day. It was such a tough experience for me. And I remember each school year was very difficult, but something about my sixth grade year was exceptionally bad and arduous and just really brutal in just every way. I had a very ruthless principal who gave me a hard time a lot because I remember like since like the school was so small, like it wasn't like a big public school where you had like all these huge administrators that would deal with things, and then like depending on how things went from there, then you would go to, like maybe go to like the next administrator. Um, depending on, and also depending on like how like the teachers felt about things. But basically, something that I do tell people, and I'm not afraid to admit this either. I was a very obnoxious and disruptive student growing up. I got in trouble a lot, and the big way that my school punished me for at least the first 7 years, just giving me a bunch of lunch attentions whenever I did something wrong. And a lot of times they were over like kind of ridiculous things. And they would send emails home to my parents a lot over things that I did. And I just remember getting in trouble a lot from pre-K to fifth grade. But then somehow when I got to sixth grade, then all of a sudden things just got a lot more brutal in terms of like disciplinary infractions. I remember, like I said, I was a very obnoxious student. And like I said, I'm not afraid to admit that because it's who I was at the time, and I'm not afraid to tell people who I am. I would be very disruptive in class. I would ask a lot of questions. I would say inappropriate things. And I couldn't get really used to it. I just remember being a very obnoxious student, and then I, you know, received a disciplinary infraction one day after saying something inappropriate class, where I got thrown off a sports team at my school, and I wasn't allowed back on it for that reason. And then I just remember having issues with my principal a lot. I almost got suspended my sixth grade year for something that I didn't even do. And I just remember then I was in a really decimated state because like I was in this horrible place in my school. My parents weren't willing to pull me out because they didn't know where to put me. Um, I was in a really bad situation at my current Catholic school. And then I just remember then it was announced that the school was shutting down and that we were going to be merging with another school that was fairly close to my school, like another Catholic parochial school. And then that was kind of my gateway to get out. And it was comforting because like I knew I was never going to deal with the issues that I was never going to do. I was never going to deal with my principal ever again because she was honestly horrible in so many ways. And then like after that school year was over, then I was like, you have such a unique story to tell. You dealt with a school shutting down. You dealt with so many disciplinary infractions. You dealt with, being bullied, and now you're being given the opportunity to start all over at a whole new place, at a brand new school. um Maybe you should like write about that, because that's something that not many people can say that like they did. I mean, how many people can say that their school shut down and while they were there they were having the worst experience ever, and then they were given the opportunity to start all over and just begin fresh and have a clean slate. So my book centers basically on a young character named Gray, who is excited more than anything to start middle school because she's like, this is like a new phase in my life. I'm not in elementary school anymore. I'm finally starting to become a young adult because when you're in middle school is a very complicated time. Like you're just starting to feel like, a young woman or a young man, like you're just starting to go through puberty, everything's starting to feel a lot different. And she's just so excited for all that change. And then she gets there and everything is such a mess. She loses her best friend. She has issues with her peers. She gets thrown off the cheer team like I was. Her father passes away, and really just one thing leads to another, and she just can't take it anymore. And then her mother's given a new job offer somewhere else that would pay better because living off of a single income is very difficult. So then she's given the opportunity to start all over, not only just like at a new school, but in a new state. And then she gets to the new place and things still don't go right. And that's what happened to me when I got to my new school. Things still weren't going right. And basically then she realizes in the end, I realized at the end of high school, and this is what kind of, gave me the end of the book. At the end of high school, I realized something. I can never, ever make my circumstances ideal. I can never, ever change who I am as a person. I can never fix all the things that I've done, but I can fix and I can change my outlook on everything. And how I look at that is like, even if you're in like the most ideal circumstance in the world, even if you're in freaking New York City and you have literally Times Square as your backyard, if you don't have the right outlook on and everything in your life, what's the point of that? And you kind of see Gray go through this where like, she as soon as there's like something that goes wrong, she can't cope with it and deal with it and just like look at the silver lining. She realizes in the end that it's not about what you're doing and where you are, but how you're dealing with it. And that's the message of the book. It's not about what your circumstances are, it's how you deal with them and what your outlook is. And that's something that took me a very long time to realize. I always thought that like if I was given a million chances to restart, that I would be happy. But then I realized nothing will ever make me happy unless I'm happy myself. And that's the overall message of the book. You need to have the renewal of your state of mind, that if you are grateful and if you are content with what you're given in front of you, and if you look at the and like you look at everything glass half full, then like you'll be a lot more content and like a lot happier with what's around you and what you're given. Because without your outlook, I mean, if you don't have a positive outlook, then you would always find the negative and everything. I mean, I would personally say I didn't have a good day today, but I'm here now. I'm having a great interview with you, and I have the opportunity to, do a lot of great things today, and that's what I'm going to focus on, and that's life. Focusing on the positive, because otherwise you would always be miserable. And that's the message of the book, and that's what inspired it, and that's basically everything in a nutshell. I'm sorry if that was long, but I thought that was very important to share.
Awesome response. Thank you so much, for giving us such a detailed explanation. Um, I feel like I just read the book without ever reading it. You just gave such a detailed explanation as to, the context and the content of the book. It was awesome, truly. Now, you guys, you can find her book on her Instagram profile, which will be linked down below in the description. Sonoma, to wrap this all up, I'll just give you the floor really quick. Do you have any, message that you want to not portray, but to push out onto the world, whether it be advice to a young girl that wants to get into writing or general, world message that you want to say? What do you have to say?
I would just say, like, share your story to the world, and, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Because if I was afraid to put myself out there, I don't think I would be where I am today. Because even when the book was even all said and done, I almost didn't even want to publish it because I was like, this book is really personal. It like shares so much about me and who I am. Like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Everyone is vulnerable. Everyone has their own issues that they're tackling. As for reasons why I chose to publish the book, because I wanted someone to feel less alone. Because you do realize in life that you really can't be afraid about what other people think of you. Otherwise, you would never get anything done. I mean, if I cared about what people thought of me, I would be nowhere right now. And that's definitely something that I would keep in mind. And don't ever insult yourself. Don't ever insult your writing. Be open to criticism, because I definitely always was. And have people that support you, to encourage you. And yeah, like definitely just like, I mean, YOLO, honestly. I mean, if writing's what you want to do, a great philosopher once said, if you want to be a writer, write. It's really just that simple, write and never really look back from there. Don't care what other people think of you, and, be the best version of yourself that you want to be on and off the page.
Awesome message, Sonoma. Lastly, I just wanted to thank you for coming onto the show. I can say this was an awesome interview to have. You gave really in-depth and great responses to what I was questioning and what I was curious about. So again, just overall, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. I definitely enjoyed being on here today.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sonoma. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel below. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.